Farmers came to speak about the impact of the liquid natural gas pipeline on their land.
We farm about 20 miles north of here. Our farm has been there since 1923. We're proud of what we do, and we've been involved in conservation efforts to protect our farm, not only for our generation, but for future generations to come. Last summer, I never knew what an LNG was, and a neighbor told me, he says, I think there's something going on in the neighborhood that you need to know about. I said, what's that? Well, he says, they're talking about some crazy pipeline that they want to put through the country. And later on, we had an informational meeting, I think it was over at Woodburn, and a guy come up to me and he says, we're going to be your neighbor. And I looked at him, he kind of grinned at me, he says, we're going to be a good neighbor. But he says, we're going to be your neighbor. Well, later on I found out more about it, and they sent me some maps in the mail, and I found out what he meant by being a good neighbor. He was going to put a line right through the middle of our property. He couldn't have hit dead center if he'd have measured it. And I looked at that for a long time, and I thought, I guess if it's justified, we probably should, that should be okay. But that was kind of hard to swallow. But then I got to thinking, all the tile lines that we'd put in for underground drainage systems were going to be damaged. They said they'd put them back, but they never can do it the right way. A lot of our conservation projects on Palmer Creek, where we planted back Douglas fir, nice trees, 6 to 8 foot tall, they're just going to mow them down, 100-foot swath. On the other side, we had a sediment dam plan. They're going to go right up through the middle of that, right up through a gully or a swale that we fought for a long time for erosion. They're going to go right up through the middle of that and loosen it up, and we knew they were just going to be eroded again. And so then they went right across their tile field again. We got irrigation main lines across there too. For nearly a mile on that property, they were going to affect us. So for all the things that we'd worked for all the years, all the infrastructure that we'd worked so hard to put in, they were going to either affect or change or just destroy.
We don't need LNG in Oregon. We got to stop it now. We need the governor to slow down and think about it before we do it. We've got a whole valley down there that the fire commissioner says, if that pipeline breaks, I'm shutting down both ends of the valley and let it burn. We don't want that.
One of the major concerns of property owners is safety. If something was to ignite the pipeline, the blast zone alone would be wider than the length of 4 football fields.
These big, large interstate pipelines in Oregon are not odorized. The reason that they connect in Malin is because California has different rules. You have to have them odorized. There should be a rule in Oregon, and that should not be that difficult, that this gas is odorized, because then you would smell it before you were, non-odorized gas, you're not going to know until, well, you won't know. You'll be on the other side of glory by the time you figure it out.
At 1,000 Friends of Oregon, part of our mission is to protect the valuable farms and forest lands of this state. And there are over 600 miles of pipelines being proposed in this state. 600 miles of right-of-way, each mile a 100-foot wide clear cut across the landscape. Thousands of Oregon citizens from Clatsop and Clackamas counties in the north to Coos, Jackson, and Klamath in the south have been notified that their land is in the path, and because of eminent domain, they have no say. Many of these landowners are farmers and make their living off the land. You've heard from some of them today. Others are out in the audience. I have a question for you. How many of you have eaten, say, in the last 24 hours? Huh? Well, then I guess you all know that the impact of LNG pipelines across this state affect every one of us, whether we're those landowners or not. I have one very simple question. I think I know the answer, given your response earlier, but I'll ask. Is it a good idea to sacrifice valuable farmland and our family farmers so we can ship dirty fossil fuel to California to heat their swimming pools? No! We want to protect Oregon's valuable farmland. And at a time when we need to actually strengthen our land use laws to protect that farmland, and we need to reduce our dependence and reduce our emissions of greenhouse gases, LNG makes absolutely no sense at all. So I really want, it's been a while since our folks inside have heard us. So I want our voices to be loud and clear so that we send a message to the folks inside that we want to save Oregon farms. So let's hear it. Save Oregon farms! Louder! Save Oregon farms! Louder! Save Oregon farms! One more time! Save Oregon farms!
So how many of you are about to have your property condemned under eminent domain? Yes, I'm one. How many of you know that the Palomar Pipeline is plowing through 35 miles of the Mount Hood National Forest? Yeah, thank you. And I'm here to say that I think LNG is not the bridge to the future. I think it's the bridge to nowhere. I think that LNG, the toll on the bridge is high. The toll is our air quality, our water quality, our ability as citizens to manage and take care of our community and to build future power. Renewable power is where our energy should be going at the moment. So thanks for being here.
So I have a question for you all. Do LNG terminals make any sense for Oregon? No! Will they enhance our fishing and our farms? No! Will they make any single community in Oregon safer? No! Will they help us tackle global warming? No! Are they a fit with Oregon values? No! You all have it just right. No is the right answer. What's more important, putting in this LNG terminal or protecting our children and our planet? Children and our planet, you bet. And billions of dollars would go into the infrastructure. Wouldn't it make a lot more sense to spend those billions on research and development of alternative fuels? Let's develop. Yes, absolutely. Wouldn't it make sense to spend those billions on a 700-fold increase in solar power? And wind power? And wave power? And geothermal power? Wouldn't it make sense to spend those billions creating livable family wage jobs here in Oregon, sustainable, enduring jobs? I'd like to know this. Does this project do damage to Coos Bay if there is a natural tsunami? Yes. Does it choke up the channel because of safety and terrorist concerns? And what about the Columbia Shipping Channel, a lifeblood arterial channel for our economy? Does this help the channel, the Columbia Channel? No! And what about this issue of a terrorist threat? Isn't this just one big floating bomb? Yes! So, a lot of damage would be done over the course of a 600-mile pipeline to our families and farms, our fishing and our forests and farms. But what about property rights? Damage done there as well. I was down in Roseburg. Anybody here from Roseburg or Roseburg around? And I can tell you, people came out to tell me this is not right for us either. And I'm glad to see Roseburg up here. And I come from Roseburg, so I'm really glad to see you here. So, this is the thing. Why are we building a terminal to provide LNG gas to California? So let's say this. Let's say no to California. No. Let's say no to an LNG terminal. No. Let's say no to federal supersiding that tries to roll over our state values. No. Let's say yes to a bright energy future. Yes. And yes to building and doing research and development on alternative clean fuels. Yes. And let's say yes to tackling global warming. Yes. And let's say yes to Oregon taking control of our own future with Oregon values. I stand with you today. Let's stop this LNG terminal. Thank you very much.